It is Friday, June 23rd. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright, we have a lot of things to talk about this week, so let's get into it with a firmware update for PS4. PS4 got firmware update 4.71, and as far as we know, nothing else is really included in it other than software, stability, system improvements, or whatever. That's all well and good. Actually, there was another update, though, for the YouTube app, for PlayStation VR specifically, and the only reason why I'm even mentioning this one, which I normally wouldn't, but it's because now it's for stability improvements for PlayStation VR support. No extra, they don't bump the resolution up on YouTube or anything, which I believe right now it's capped at 1440p or something. But yes, that is also an update that you can download as well if you have PlayStation VR. So coming out next month, there's going to be a new officially licensed PlayStation 4 Remote by PDP. So this is kind of an improved, smaller remote, just a universal remote with the PlayStation face buttons, and you can easily navigate the menus and stuff. It's 25 bucks. Again, next month, so if you're in the market for a easy-to-use movie remote, app remote for PlayStation 4, you might want to look into this one. So some interesting news broke out during E3 where Sony's Jim Ryan was talking about if they were going to be doing something in Europe this year, which if you recall, the past few years, Sony hasn't done anything in Europe. Usually they would do a Gamescom show, 1 or 2 years they did Paris Games Week, but the past few years they have not had any large presence there. They usually have floor space, but they didn't do any sort of press conference. Well, anyway, Jim Ryan said that they do want to do something there this year, but they're not, they're looking into it and they're not divulging details just yet. But the kind of wording that he used basically was, without giving anything away, it would be nice to do something in Europe this year. So that's something we're looking at very carefully, which would mean that there might be something there, but I think that might just be Jim discussing floor space or something, or having kiosks set up, or maybe they might have some sort of announcement there, but I still wouldn't expect a press conference or anything. Alright, so this next one is a rumor. This is coming from comic book sources are saying, various sources are saying that we are going to be getting an LA Noire remaster for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, I believe Switch as well. This, I normally wouldn't talk about a third-party game, but the rumor is that PlayStation 4 version is also being investigated for PlayStation VR support. So the game would actually get a first-person view mode, much like Rockstar did with Grand Theft Auto 5, and this would probably be a sort of situation where they would add PlayStation VR in that sort of sense, right, of the first-person viewpoint. So I find this particularly important because the whole adoption of virtual reality is a believable medium, as I've always said. If you don't believe it, you're crazy. It does have a future, it does have a place in games, it works, it's fun, it's interesting. The thing is games. We need games, we need longer experiences, we don't need these sort of shallow, 20-minute to a few-hour games where you're static and in one area. We need big, sprawling open-world games, or games where you can walk around and do things, and full, big-budget games, right? Now, there's not a whole lot of original titles like that, but I think a big key point here is that to see more games like this. So the whole Skyrim VR thing, you heard my rant about that earlier. I think it's totally awesome. That makes sense. That's a great idea for a virtual reality game because, let's face it, that's a game that's tried and true. People love, people enjoy it. And if it can translate well to VR, it's going to be another proving point for, and another sort of sustainability for VR in the future. It builds momentum, it builds interest. So I think one important thing is that, if you're not having full original games be done yet, if you're not having developers and publishers take a gamble on putting a shitload of money into an original new IP that's VR from the ground up, experiment with older titles, add support for older titles and see, get more of those games out there and build a sort of incentive for people to because that's the thing with pre-existing games. People might have already played LA Noire or played Skyrim, but to have them experience it in a completely different manner might be a lot more compelling to them than to say, spend a whole bunch of money on VR and then have all these original titles that you don't know if they're good or not. It might be easier on the consumer. It might build an easier point. It might be an easier point of entry for some people in terms of their budget and going into it with dropping that amount of cash. So I would hope that this would work. I would hope that this is true. And LA Noire is an awesome game too. So to play it in VR, I think would be extremely interesting because it's a detective game. It's all about recognizing facial features in a person to see if they're lying or not. I'm all for it. So we have more God of War details. As always, game director Cory Barlog was discussing some more details about the game. So one thing he kind of elaborated on is just, once again, how different this is from previous God of War games. One thing being is that the camera is, in your control now. It's going to be over the shoulder for Kratos. You can move it around with the right stick. And it's going to be sort of a complete sequence. There's never going to be a moment in the new God of War where the camera cuts away or there's a black screen or, it moves away to another character. It's always going to be a straight sequence from beginning to end. No cuts. It's always going to be focused on Kratos. The camera might not always be looking at Kratos, but that's sort of the sort of the presentation that they're going for with this game. So I appreciate that Corey is divulging more and more details on Twitter, and I'm sure it won't take long for us to learn even more about the game. So Knack 2, right? I think the one thing a lot of people always think of when we talk about Knack 2 is like, and at least this is what I always think, is what made you guys decide to do this game? Because I will always say it, nobody asked for Knack 2. Whether it turns, you know, the fact that it's kind of a meme and people make fun of it, nobody asked for this game. Well, now they actually talked about why they are doing Knack 2, which I'm glad we got a response for it. The game's director, Mark Cerny, was quoted as saying, "Well, the reason we are making a sequel to Knack is just that the team had a whole lot of ideas that they just didn't manage to get into the first game. So in a very real sense, what you're seeing with Knack 2 is the items that ended up on the cutting room floor." As always with big budget video games, or just any video game in general, more often than not, a lot of content ends up getting cut from the game. With bigger budget titles, it's always you'd be surprised just how much stuff gets cut from the game, and not necessarily because they want to sell it to you after all that, you know, nonsense. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, by the way. It does happen, unfortunately. But the reality is when a lot of stuff gets taken out of a game, it's just because the developer has to hit their deadline, or they just don't have the time, money, and resources to stuff everything into a game. And time again, every developer will tell you this is a reality of it. You'll have artists and programmers and engineers working on something really important, and then the director has to walk over and scrap it just because there is no time to include that particular moment of the game. So Mark is more or less pointing towards that, and that's why they're doing that too, because they want to sort of revisit a lot of those ideas. Which, fine, if that's the case, you know, I do it and actually do it right this time. Make this game really convincing for people. I love 3D platformers. I want to see a game like Knack succeed. I want to see games like Yooka-Laylee succeed. I miss this genre very much, and I want it to have a place, and I want it to be more common ground for other developers and publishers to look at and say, hey, let's make a 3D platformer, and let's make a big budget one too. I want this to be a thing. If anything, though, the one thing you can take away from this is that, you know, Sony is still very much in the same boat of they've been for the past 5, 6, 7 years now, where it's like they will put money into games that people don't necessarily want because they believe in the vision and the idea. They do fund a lot of games where they know right away it's more artistically approached, or it's something that not everyone's going to buy or dig, but they just kind of believe in the project. Maybe this is just Sony corporate throwing Mark a bone or something, I don't know, but I'll remain cautiously optimistic for Knack 2, and I will give it another shot. I'm still the one person that enjoys the first Knack. I like it, but I get that people don't like Knack, so that's why I'm outspoken about it. Like, nobody asked for Knack 2. So, Horizon Zero Dawn, the game did pretty well. People really enjoy it. It sold a lot of copies. Turns out it's actually a pretty awesome game. Well, Sony thinks so too, and it looks like Horizon may have a long-term future. Sony Interactive Entertainment President of America, Shawn Layden, had this interesting quote I'd like to share with you all. In an interview with The Telegraph, he said, "The reception for the game has been fantastic. Hermen Hulst has got a very keen mind on where he wants to take Horizon and what the roadmap is. And that roadmap is expressed in multiple years. I think we'll be in the Horizon business for a very long time." Now, if that doesn't tell you that this game is going to have a sequel or two, I don't know what will. You didn't really need me to tell you that, though, either, because, let's face it, this game was actually quite good. And even if you didn't enjoy it or it wasn't your cup of tea, you can't deny that this game had a very positive reception, and it did do very well for Sony. And I'm glad, though, too, because this is, I think, a place where Guerrilla Games can finally come into their own. They did well with Killzone for a very long time, but the fact of the matter is, people always, you know, Killzone never had that sort of reputation of a AAA experience game. Or, I mean, it's a AAA title, but, you know, it's not, people don't look at it as a Mario, a Zelda, a Halo. People just never will put Killzone in that same light. And while it had a hardcore following and all that jazz, I think Horizon is a better place for them right now. And so I'm glad that they can comfortably move forward with it, because you know damn well Sony Interactive is going to support them doing another one. They're probably going to encourage them to do another one, and I'm sure Guerrilla even is fine with doing another one too. As Hermen Hulst has also said in a number of interviews that he does enjoy Aloy as a character. The team over there enjoyed making the characters in the game, the robots, designing the gameplay. I mean, it sounds like they're in a very good place right now. So I look forward to the next game, and well, even more so the DLC that's coming up by the end of this year. So, but I would be interested to see what the sequel will be now, because that story was crazy good. So I'm ready for more. So for our final news story, I didn't really see this one coming, but I guess it's not super surprising to hear this. Well, anyway, in an interview with Eurogamer, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy's director, Sean Escagi, I hope I'm saying his name right, he was asked about, you know, if this is going to be the end of the characters for Uncharted, and if this is sort of like, you know, putting the franchise on hold. And he had this to say, which is, I wouldn't say it's the end. This thieving world is huge. There's so many characters. Even before we settled on this particular story, we were exploring Sullivan, we were exploring Cutter, and pairing each other up, thinking what would be right. What would have conflict, growth, something new, something fresh, and Chloe's the one that kept jumping out. But to say the Uncharted world is done, I doubt that highly. Now here's the thing, Uncharted 4 comes out, Naughty Dog is pretty vocal about how this is Drake's last story, and everyone was like, good, that's fine, we agree, and Uncharted 4 was a great sort of send-off for Drake. Then there was always, but there was this inkling feeling of like, oh, well, there's probably going to be another, like a DLC or something, like single-player DLC. Comes The Lost Legacy, nobody's surprised. It's about Nadine and Chloe. Oh, cool, people are on board with that. You know, it's not more Drake, so this will be another situation where we get some more Uncharted, but it's still gonna feel like kind of a new game, but it's still the same gameplay mechanics and all that jazz. But anyway, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I thought once The Lost Legacy's done, Uncharted is certainly going to be put on a pretty big resting period. Yeah, they're going to come back to Uncharted at some point. Sony Interactive is not going to let Uncharted just, you know, never be made ever again. But I think it's like, most people probably thought, okay, the game's going to be on a 5 to, let's say, a very long-term thing, 5 to 10-year hiatus, right? And then they might revisit another Uncharted game or something. Especially because Naughty Dog, as a creative developer, loves to explore new ideas and move on to different things. So, you know, they've done how many Uncharteds now? I thought it was pretty obvious that they were not going to, after The Lost Legacy, do another one. But what he's kind of, I don't know, the way I'm reading it, he's kind of implying that they might jump into another game somewhat right away, maybe after another project or two. Like, we might see Uncharted within 2-3 years or something again, as an announcement, and then another 2-3 years till the eventual release of the game. I was expecting a very long-term wait for them, which I still think they should do after Lost Legacy. I don't want them to keep, you know, shoehorning Uncharted left and right, especially with Uncharted 4. It was a great send-off for Drake, and I was fine with Lost Legacy. And then Naughty Dog was pretty vocal about saying over and over again, like, oh, well, you know, we kept making Lost Legacy, and, like, it just kept getting bigger and bigger, so now, boom, now it's a full retail release at $40, which is cool, and people are excited about that too, but, like, okay, if that's done, like, maybe we should, you know, I think it should be put on rest. But that's just me. You know, franchise fatigue is a very real thing, and I would hope that a lot of, you know, the creative people behind these games would just sort of let it rest and not overdo it. And Naughty Dog was saying that that's kind of what they wanted to do. Maybe this is also Sony Interactive saying, like, you know, this Uncharted can't go just yet. This franchise makes a lot of money for us. We would like it to, and Sony owns Uncharted. They can do whatever they want with it. Although the way Sean's talking about it makes it sound like the team at Naughty Dog wants to keep making the game, which I thought wasn't the case. Or, but maybe Sean's quote is what I'm referring to. Maybe he is saying, oh yeah, I highly doubt it's over, but he's saying, yeah, we'll go to it maybe a long time from now. I don't know. It's all about interpretation. So only time will tell what's going to happen after the Lost Legacy, but I would hope that the franchise has a much-needed rest. Although, on the flip side, what he is saying, exploring multiple characters, yeah, it is a great universe. I particularly really liked Cutter. I mean, Sullivan was totally a lovable character. I would love to see more of these guys. You know, if people probably want to see more of Sam from Uncharted 4. Maybe an Elena story or something. Who knows? But there is a lot of stuff that they can do with it. I just don't want them to throw it down everybody's throats. Those are just some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. This coming Monday is going to be the last part of Katamari Damacy. Like I said, it was a really short game, but it was a fun game nonetheless. This time I'll do a Twitter poll. So that one I kind of forced on you guys, but it was a quick one, that's why. We'll do a Twitter poll. I'll brainstorm some games I feel like doing for the channel. I'll put them up on Twitter. It would be, I don't know if I might announce it on Twitter. I might not. Depending on how much time I have to record, I may have to just do that midweek and not wait until LTPS on Friday to warn everybody about the poll. So, but stay posted on Twitter if you want to keep up with that at Mystic Ryan to see if I'm gonna when I'm gonna post the poll. But that will be the case for the next Let's Play. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.